Today, they'll learn that reckoning has a name.
The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I was hunched over my workbench at 1 a.m, trying to fix Sarah's busted coffee maker. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was repairing something for a woman who'd been breaking me for months. The house was dead quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional creak of settling wood. That's when I heard it. The sharp buzz of Sarah's iPhone vibrating against the granite countertop she'd insisted we couldn't afford, but bought anyway. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except Sarah never forgot her phone. Ever. The woman slept with that thing clutched in her hand like a security blanket. But tonight she'd rushed out to her emergency meeting at the advertising agency so fast she'd left it behind. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Jesus Christ, I muttered, wiping grease off my hands with an old rag. My name's Jack Morrison, and I've been married to Sarah for 23 years. I'm a construction supervisor. She's a creative director at Henderson & Associates. We used to be happy. Used to be a lot of things. I walked into the kitchen, my work boots heavy on the hardwood floors Sarah had picked out during our renovation phase 3 years ago. The phone lit up with another message, and I glanced at the screen without thinking. She's occupied now. She'll call later. D. My blood turned to ice water. I stared at that message for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. My brain tried to process it, tried to find some innocent explanation. Maybe it was about a client. Maybe Sarah was in a meeting with some guy named Dave or Dan But I knew. Deep down in my gut, where the truth lives before your brain catches up, I knew exactly what occupied meant. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. Sarah hadn't changed her passcode, still our wedding anniversary, which now seemed like a sick joke. I scrolled through the messages, and there it was. Months of them. Hundreds of texts between Sarah and someone named Derek Henderson. Derek Henderson, her boss. The smooth-talking, silver-haired piece of crap who drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than I made in a month. Sarah, can't wait to feel you inside me again. Derek, my wife's at her book club until 10. Come over. Sarah, Jack's working late. Perfect timing. I read message after message, each one a knife twist in my chest. They'd been screwing for 8 months. 8 months of lies, of Sarah coming home late with excuses about client dinners and weekend strategy sessions. 8 months of me being the world's biggest fool. The garage door rumbled open. I looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. Sarah's emergency meeting was over, and she was coming home to her loving, clueless husband. Except I wasn't clueless anymore. I heard her heels clicking across the garage floor. Then the door to the kitchen opened. Jack? You still up, honey? Honey? The word tasted like poison in the air. In here, I called, my voice surprisingly steady. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in her work clothes, a black skirt that hugged her hips and a white blouse that was slightly wrinkled. Her lipstick was gone, and her hair was messed up just enough to tell a story I didn't want to hear. What are you doing up so late? She asked, then noticed her phone in my hands. Oh, you found my phone. I was looking everywhere for it. I held up the device, the screen still glowing with Derek's message. Yeah, I found it, along with some interesting reading material. The color drained from Sarah's face. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Jack, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted, my voice getting harder. Can you explain 8 months of screwing your boss? Can you explain telling him how much you love the way he touches you? Can you explain planning your little rendezvous while I'm working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house and your car and your designer clothes? Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but I was past caring. The woman I'd loved since college, the woman I'd built a life with, had been living a lie for months. It just happened, Jack. I never meant for it to... Bees. I slammed the phone down on the counter so hard the screen cracked. Nothing just happens for 8 months. You made a choice. Every time you spread your legs for him, you made a choice. Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't talk to me like that. You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. The way Derek makes me feel... The way Derek makes you feel? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What about the way I feel? What about 23 years of marriage? What about the vows you made? You don't understand, Sarah said, her voice getting stronger, more defiant. You come home covered in dirt and sweat, talking about construction schedules and overtime. Derek understands my world. He's sophisticated. He's rich, I finished. Just say it, Sarah. He's rich, and I'm not. She looked away, which was answer enough. That's when I made my decision. Not the revenge part. That would come later. But the decision to stop being the sufferer in my own story. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Derek Henderson's number. No need for her to call later. You can have her. We're done. I hit send and watched Sarah's face go white as her phone buzzed with the notification. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I set you free," I said, grabbing my truck keys from the hook by the door. "You want Derek Henderson? You got him. Hope he's worth losing everything." I walked past her toward the garage, but she grabbed my arm. "Jack, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" I turned to look at her one last time. This woman I'd loved, who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my life. This stranger who'd been lying to my face for months. "Sarah," I said quietly, "the only thing we need to work out is who gets what in the divorce." I got in my truck and backed out of the garage, leaving her standing there in the kitchen with her broken phone and her broken lies. As I drove away, I saw headlights turning onto our street. A black BMW. Derek Henderson coming to do damage control. But it was too late for that. The damage was done, and now it was time for consequences. I drove through the empty streets of our small main city, past the closed shops and darkened houses where normal people were sleeping in their beds, trusting their spouses, living honest lives. The kind of life I thought I had until an hour ago. My phone rang. Sarah. I declined the call. It rang again. Derek's number this time. I declined that one too. They could panic all they wanted. They could scramble and scheme and try to figure out how to contain this mess. But they'd forgotten one important thing about Jack Morrison. I might be a blue-collar guy who gets his hands dirty for a living, but I'm not stupid, and I'm sure as hell not going to be anyone's fool. Not anymore. I ended up at Murphy's Tavern, the kind of dive bar where the beer is cheap, the lighting is dim, and nobody asks questions about why you're drinking alone at 2 a.m. The bartender, a grizzled old-timer named Pete, just nodded when I ordered a whiskey and left me alone with my thoughts. Those thoughts weren't pretty. 23 years. That's how long Sarah and I had been married. We'd met in college. She was studying marketing. I was getting my degree in construction management. She was smart and funny and had this laugh that could light up a room. I fell hard and fast, and somehow, miracle of miracles, she fell for me too. We got married right after graduation, bought our first house, a tiny 2-bedroom ranch that needed everything fixed. I did most of the work myself, and Sarah would help, handing me tools and painting walls and making grand plans for our future. We were going to have kids. She was going to build her career. I was going to start my own construction company. We were going to grow old together. Some of that happened. Sarah's career took off like a rocket. She climbed the ladder at Henderson & Associates, winning awards and bringing in big clients. My construction career went well too. I became a supervisor, earned good money, provided a comfortable life for us. But the kids never came. After years of trying and disappointment, we just stopped talking about it. The space where those children should have been filled up with other things. Work, hobbies, the slow drift that happens when two people stop really seeing each other. But I never stopped loving her. Even when she started working later and later, even when she began traveling more for business, even when the intimate moments between us became rare and mechanical. I thought it was just a rough patch. I thought we'd work through it. I was halfway through my second whiskey when someone slid onto the bar stool next to me. Jack Morrison, drinking alone at Murphy's at 2:30 in the morning. This can't be good. I looked up to see Detective Ray Sullivan settling his bulk onto the stool. Ray and I went way back. We'd played football together in high school, before he went into law enforcement and I went into construction. He was 3 years from retirement with gray hair, a beer gut, and the kind of world-weary eyes that came from seeing too much human stupidity. Ray, I nodded. What brings you to this fine establishment? Got a call about a domestic disturbance on Elm Street. Turned out to be nothing. Drunk college kids fighting over a girl. Saw your truck in the parking lot on my way back to the station. He signaled Pete for a beer. Want to tell me why you look like someone ran over your dog? I considered lying, making up some story about work stress or insomnia. But Ray had been a cop for 25 years. He could smell BS from a mile away. Sarah's having an affair, I said simply. Ray's beer stopped halfway to his mouth. Jesus, Jack, you sure? I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the text messages I'd photographed before Sarah got home. Ray's expression grew darker with each screen. Derek Henderson, Ray said, handing the phone back. I know that name. Runs that fancy ad agency downtown. Married to some socialite, couple of kids in private school. Yeah, well, apparently he's been running more than an ad agency. Ray was quiet for a long moment, drinking his beer and processing the information. Finally, he spoke. What are you going to do? It was a good question. The smart thing would be to call a lawyer, file for divorce, split our assets, and move on with my life. The civilized thing, the mature thing. But I wasn't feeling very civilized. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm not going to just roll over and take it. Ray studied my face. Jack, I've seen what happens when good men go bad because of cheating wives. Don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. Anything that gets you arrested, anything that hurts innocent people, anything that makes you the villain in this story. I finished my whiskey and set the glass down hard. Maybe I want to be the villain, Ray. Maybe I'm tired of being the good guy who gets crap on. No, you're not. Ray's voice was firm. You're hurt and angry, and you have every right to be. But you're not a villain, Jack. Don't let her turn you into one. We sat in silence for a while, two middle-aged men contemplating the wreckage of life's promises. Finally, Ray spoke again. You want my advice? Do I have a choice? Document everything. Get evidence. Do this right and you'll come out ahead in the divorce. Do it wrong and you'll lose everything. I already lost everything, I said. No, Ray said. You lost a cheating wife. Trust me, that's not everything. My phone buzzed with another call from Sarah. I declined it without looking. She's persistent, Ray observed. She's panicking. Derek probably told her to fix this before his wife finds out. Ray leaned closer. His wife doesn't know? I doubt it. Rich guys like Henderson don't risk their comfortable lives for office affairs. He's got too much to lose. A slow smile spread across Ray's face. You know, Jack, there might be ways to make sure the right people get the right information. Hypothetically speaking, of course. I looked at my old friend, seeing the gleam in his eyes. Hypothetically. I mean, if someone were to gather evidence of an affair, photos, documents, witness statements, that evidence might accidentally find its way to interested parties, wives, employers, maybe even the local newspaper if the story was juicy enough. That sounds almost vengeful, Detective Sullivan. Not vengeful, just thorough. I believe in thorough investigations. For the first time since I'd found those text messages, I smiled. A real smile. Ray, you magnificent fool. Are you suggesting we investigate my wife's affair? I'm suggesting you deserve to know the full truth, all of it. How long it's been going on, where they meet, what promises they've made to each other. Knowledge is power, Jack. And what would I do with that knowledge? Ray shrugged. Whatever a reasonable man would do. Share it with the appropriate parties. Make sure justice is served. I thought about Sarah coming home with messed up hair and missing lipstick. I thought about Derek Henderson in his expensive suits, thinking he was so much better than the blue-collar husband he was betraying. I thought about 8 months of lies and betrayal and the life I'd been living that turned out to be a complete fiction. Hypothetically, I said, how would someone go about gathering this evidence? Ray grinned. Well, hypothetically, someone might start by checking credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts. Someone might visit the places where cheaters like to meet. Someone might even have friends in the security business who could provide surveillance footage. Sounds complicated. Not if you have help. Not if you have someone who knows how investigations work. I looked at Ray, this old friend who was offering to help me destroy the people who'd destroyed my marriage. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt like I was crossing a line. Instead, it felt like justice. When do we start? I asked. Ray finished his beer and dropped a 20 on the bar. We start tomorrow. Tonight, you go home and act normal. Don't let them know what's coming. They're probably at my house right now having some kind of crisis meeting. Even better, let them panic. Let them make mistakes. Panicked people do stupid things and stupid things leave evidence. I stood up, feeling more focused than I had in hours. The pain was still there. The betrayal still burned. But now I had a purpose. Now I had a plan. Ray, I said as we walked toward the door, thank you. Don't thank me yet, he replied. Thank me when we're done. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. My truck sat next to Ray's patrol car in the empty parking lot. In a few hours, the sun would come up on a new day, and I'd begin the process of taking my life back. One more thing, Ray said as we reached our vehicles. Whatever we find, whatever we do with it, we do it right. Legal, clean, no shortcuts. I won't be part of anything that crosses the line. Understood. Good. He got in his car, then rolled down the window. Jack, she's going to try to convince you this is your fault, that you drove her to it, that you weren't enough for her. Don't listen to that BS. A cheater is a cheater, and the only person responsible for her choices is her. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Ray drove away, leaving me alone in the parking lot with my thoughts and my plans. I got in my truck and headed home, wondering what I'd find when I got there. Whatever it was, I was ready for it. The sufferer phase of my life was over. Now came the reckoning. I pulled into my driveway at 3:15 a.m. to find Derek Henderson's BMW still parked on the street. The lights were on in my living room, and I could see two silhouettes through the curtains, heads close together in what looked like an intense conversation. Perfect. Let them scramble. Let them try to figure out how to contain the mess they'd made. I parked in the garage and sat in my truck for a moment, gathering myself. Ray was right. I needed to play this smart. No emotional outbursts, no dramatic confrontations, just cold, calculated moves toward a specific goal. The goal being the complete destruction of Derek Henderson's comfortable life and Sarah's career. I walked through the garage into the kitchen, making enough noise to announce my arrival. The conversation in the living room stopped abruptly, followed by urgent whispers and the sound of movement. Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes red from crying. Behind her, Derek Henderson stood awkwardly by the fireplace, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Jack," Sarah said, her voice shaky, "we need to talk." "No," I said, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a beer. "You need to talk. I need to listen to whatever BS story you've cooked up." Derek stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. In person, he was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 5'10", soft around the middle, with the kind of pale complexion that came from spending too much time in boardrooms and not enough time in the sun. "Jack, I want you to know that Sarah and I never intended for this to happen. It was just—" "Stop right there," I interrupted, pointing my beer bottle at him. "You're in my house at 3 a.m. because you've been screwing my wife for 8 months. The last thing I want to hear is how you never intended for it to happen." Derek's face flushed. "There's no need to be crude about this." I laughed, a harsh sound that made both of them flinch. "Crude? You want to talk about crude? How about screwing another man's wife while he's working overtime to pay for her lifestyle? How about lying to your own wife while you're playing house with mine?" "Jack, please," Sarah said, stepping between us. "Can we just sit down and discuss this like adults?" "Adults?" I took a long pull from my beer, studying both of them. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back for 8 months. Adults don't send text messages about how they can't wait to feel each other inside them. Sarah's face went white. Derek looked like he might throw up. "You read all of them, didn't you?" Sarah whispered. "Every single one, very educational. I especially like the one where you told him you wished you'd met him before you married me. That was a nice touch." Derek cleared his throat, trying to regain some composure. "Look, Jack, I understand you're upset." "Upset?" I set my beer down and took a step toward him. Derek instinctively backed up. "I'm not upset, Derek. I'm furious. There's a difference. We can work this out," Sarah said desperately. "We can go to counseling. We can—" "Sarah, shut up!" My voice was quiet, but it cut through her words like a blade. "Just shut up and let me think." I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the street. A few house lights were starting to come on. Early risers getting ready for work. Normal people living normal lives. People who weren't dealing with cheating spouses and home-wrecking bosses. When I turned back, Derek and Sarah were holding hands. The sight of it made my stomach turn. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "Derek, you're going to get in your car and drive home to your wife and kids. You're going to pretend this conversation never happened." Derek nodded eagerly, clearly ready to escape. "Sarah, you're going to pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. I don't care where. Derek's house, a hotel, your sister's place, I don't give a crap, but you're not sleeping in my bed tonight. Jack, this is my house too. Not anymore. Not after what you've done." Derek squeezed Sarah's hand. "You can stay at the Marriott downtown. I'll pay for it." The casual way he offered to pay for her hotel room told me everything I needed to know about their relationship. This wasn't just Zex. Derek was already taking care of Sarah financially. Probably had been for months. "How generous," I said. "The least you can do after screwing up both our lives." Derek's face hardened. "Now look here, Jack." "No, you look here." I stepped closer to him, close enough that he had to tilt his head back to meet my eyes. "You're a hunter. You used your position of power to seduce my wife, and now you're trying to act like the sufferer. But here's the thing, Derek. I'm not going away quietly. I'm not going to disappear so you two can play house without consequences. What's that supposed to mean? Sarah asked. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It means you both made choices. Now you get to live with them. Derek and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Good. They should be worried. I want you both out of my house in the next 10 minutes, I said. After that, Sarah, you can communicate with me through lawyers. Derek, if I see you on my property again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. Derek practically ran for the door. Sarah lingered, tears streaming down her face. Jack, I know you hate me right now, but I did love you. I still do. In my way. Your way, I repeated. Yeah, I've seen your way, Sarah. It involves a lot of lying and spreading your legs for your boss. That's not love. That's selfishness. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You don't have to be cruel. Cruel? I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. Honey, I haven't even started being cruel yet. Something in my tone must have scared her because she hurried upstairs to pack her bag. I heard drawers opening and closing, hangers sliding across the closet rod, the sounds of a life being hastily dismantled. 20 minutes later, she was gone. I stood in my empty house, listening to the silence. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. The air didn't smell like lies and deception anymore. I walked through the rooms Sarah and I had shared, seeing them with new eyes. The expensive furniture she'd insisted on buying, the artwork she'd chosen, the throw pillows that served no purpose except to make the couch look sophisticated. None of it felt like home anymore. It felt like a stage set for a life that had been a performance. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray. How did it go? I typed back. They're gone. When do we start digging? First thing tomorrow. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. I looked around the house one more time, then headed upstairs to my bedroom. Sarah had taken most of her clothes, but left behind the lingerie I'd bought her for Christmas. The expensive stuff she'd claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Now I knew who she'd been saving it for. I gathered up every piece of lace and silk, carried it downstairs, and threw it all in the fireplace. I lit a match and watched it burn, the flames dancing over the remnants of closeness that had been a lie. As the last piece of fabric turned to ash, I made myself a promise. Derek Henderson and Sarah Morrison thought they could betray me and walk away clean. They thought I'd be the quiet, dignified sufferer who'd suffer in silence while they built their new life on the ruins of my old one. They were wrong. By the time I was done with them, they'd wish they'd never heard the name Jack Morrison. I went to bed that night with a clear conscience and a dark purpose. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Ray showed up at my house the next morning at 7 sharp, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a manila folder thick with papers. You look like hell, he said, handing me one of the cups. Didn't sleep much. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, alternating between rage and planning. What's in the folder? The beginning of Derek Henderson's very bad week. Ray settled into one of the kitchen chairs and opened the folder. I did some preliminary research last night. Your boy Derek has been a busy man. I sat across from him, trying to focus despite the exhaustion. What did you find? Let's start with the basics. Derek Henderson, age 52, married to Patricia Henderson for 18 years. 2 kids, a boy 16, a girl 14, lives in a $4 million house on Lake Sebago, drives a BMW, owns a boat, belongs to the country club. Sounds like a real pillar of the community. Oh, it gets better. Henderson and Associates is one of the most successful ad agencies in the state. Derek's the majority owner, and, according to public records, the company's worth about $12 million. I whistled low. No wonder Sarah was impressed. Here's where it gets interesting. Ray pulled out a stack of credit card statements. I have a friend who works in financial investigations. Hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to examine Derek Henderson's spending patterns, they might find some very interesting charges. He spread the statements across the table. Even upside down, I could see the highlighted entries. Hotel rooms, Ray said, pointing to the charges. Always the same place, the Eastland Park Hotel downtown. Always booked for 3 hours in the afternoon. Always paid for with Derek's personal credit card, not the business account. Smart, keeps it separate from company expenses. Not smart enough. Look at the dates. I studied the highlighted charges, and a pattern emerged. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 8 months, with a few random weekday afternoons thrown in. Sarah's been working late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I said, the pieces clicking into place. Bingo, and look at this. Ray pulled out another document. Hotel security footage request log. Guess who requested access to the parking garage cameras for those exact dates? You? My friend in hotel security. Turns out they keep footage for 6 months before overwriting. We've got Derek's BMW and Sarah's Honda arriving and leaving together on at least a dozen occasions. I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was evidence. Real, concrete proof that would hold up in court. There's more, Ray continued. Derek's been using his business credit card to pay for dinners at expensive restaurants. Always for 2 people. Always on nights when he told his wife he was working late. How do you know what he told his wife? Ray grinned. Because Patricia Henderson is a very active member of the Lake Sebago Women's Club. They have a newsletter. Every month, Patricia writes a little column about her family life, including how proud she is of her hard-working husband who's been putting in so many extra hours lately to land new clients. Jesus, she has no idea. None. And neither do Derek's business partners. I checked with the secretary at Henderson and Associates. Derek's been telling them he's been meeting with potential clients on those Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Clients who don't exist. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. Derek Henderson wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was lying to his business partners and using company time for his affair. What about Sarah? I asked. Your wife's been more careful, but not careful enough. She's been using her personal credit card for things like lingerie, perfume, and birth control pills. Birth control? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. We haven't used birth control in 10 years. We were trying to have kids. Ray's expression softened. I'm sorry, Jack. I know this is hard to hear. No, it's good to know. It means she was planning this, not just falling into it. I took a deep breath, pushing down the emotion. What else? Sarah's been getting her hair done every Tuesday morning at an expensive salon downtown. Manicures, pedicures, the works. Always charged to her personal card, always on the day she was meeting Derek. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Sarah hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been conducting a full-scale deception, grooming herself for her lover while lying to me about working late. How much evidence do we have? I asked. Enough to prove the affair in court, enough to make sure you get a favorable divorce settlement. But if you want to really hurt them, we need more. What kind of more? Ray leaned forward, his voice dropping. We need to prove that Derek's been using company resources for personal business. We need to show that Sarah's been neglecting her actual work responsibilities. We need evidence that will destroy their professional reputations, not just their personal ones. How do we get that? We need someone on the inside, someone at Henderson and Associates who can give us access to Derek's calendar, his emails, his client files. I thought about the people Sarah had mentioned from work over the years, her assistant, the other creative directors, the account managers she'd complained about. Sarah's best friend at work is Jennifer Walsh, I said. They've been close for years. Jennifer's the HR director. Perfect. HR directors have access to everything. Personnel files, email logs, expense reports. If we could convince Jennifer to help us. Why would she help us? She's Sarah's friend, Ray smiled. Because my friend Jennifer Walsh has her own reasons to want Derek Henderson taken down a few pegs. He pulled out another document, a complaint filed with the Maine Human Rights Commission. Jennifer Walsh filed a sexual maltreatment complaint against Derek Henderson 6 months ago, claimed he made inappropriate comments about her appearance, touched her without consent, and created a hostile work environment. The complaint was withdrawn 2 weeks later. Withdrawn? Why? According to the filing, the parties reached a mutually satisfactory resolution, which usually means Derek paid her to shut up and go away. I studied the complaint, seeing opportunity in every line. So, Jennifer Walsh has reason to hate Derek Henderson. And if she finds out that Derek's been having an affair with her best friend, using company time and resources, she might be very interested in helping us gather evidence. That's assuming she doesn't already know about the affair. Only one way to find out. Ray gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. Want to take a drive downtown? Henderson and Associates opens at 8:30. I looked at the clock. It was already 8:15. In 15 minutes, Sarah would be walking into work, pretending everything was normal. Derek would be in his office, probably trying to figure out how to contain the damage from last night. They thought they were safe. They thought they could control the narrative, manage the situation, maybe even convince me to go quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Let's go," I said, grabbing my jacket. Time to meet Jennifer Walsh. As we walked to Ray's car, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since I'd found those text messages, I wasn't reacting to someone else's choices. I was making my own, and my choice was war. Henderson and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass office building in downtown Portland. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with abstract art on the walls and a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Ray and I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where the HR department was located. The plan was simple. I'd approach Jennifer Walsh as the concerned husband, who'd just discovered his wife's affair, looking for answers and support. Ray would stay in the background, letting me do the talking. Jennifer's office was at the end of a long hallway lined with motivational posters and employee recognition plaques. Through the glass door, I could see a woman in her early 40s with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense expression, typing furiously at her computer. I knocked on the doorframe. She looked up, and I saw recognition in her eyes. "Jack Morrison," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." "Hi, Jennifer. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but I was hoping we could talk. About Sarah." Jennifer's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "What about Sarah?" "I think you know what about Sarah." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Jennifer sighed and gestured for me to come in. She closed the door behind me and pulled the blinds. "How long have you known?" she asked. "I found out last night. You?" "I suspected for months. Confirmed it about 3 weeks ago when I saw them together at the Eastland Park Hotel." She sat behind her desk, her hands folded. "I'm sorry, Jack. I know this must be devastating." "It is, but right now I'm more angry than devastated." I leaned forward in my chair. "Jennifer, I need to know the truth. All of it. How long has this been going on? How serious is it? Are they planning to leave their spouses?" Jennifer was quiet for a long time, clearly wrestling with conflicting loyalties. Finally, she spoke. "They've been sleeping together for about 8 months, but the emotional affair started before that. Derek's been grooming Sarah for over a year. Special projects, private meetings, business trips that didn't need to involve her." "Business trips? Chicago, New York, Boston? Always for client development, always just the 2 of them. The company paid for separate hotel rooms, but..." She shrugged. "But they only used one." "Exactly. And Sarah's been different since this started. More confident, more demanding. She got a promotion 6 months ago that she wasn't really qualified for. Derek created the position specifically for her." I felt the familiar burn of betrayal. Sarah had told me about the promotion, how proud she was of earning it through hard work and talent. Another lie. "What about Derek's wife? Does she suspect anything?" "Patricia, no, I don't think so. She's very involved in her charity work and the kids' activities. Derek's always been a workaholic, so the late nights and business trips don't seem unusual to her." "And Derek's partners? Do they know what's going on?" Jennifer's expression hardened. "Derek's partners think he's been working overtime to land new clients. They don't know he's been using company time and resources to conduct an affair." "That must piss you off." "You have no idea." Jennifer's professional composure cracked slightly. "Do you know what Derek Henderson did to me 6 months ago?" I nodded. "Ray Sullivan filled me in. I'm sorry that happened to you." "Ray Sullivan? The detective?" Jennifer looked confused. "He's an old friend. He's helping me gather evidence for the divorce." Jennifer's eyes widened. "Evidence? What kind of evidence?" I pulled out copies of some of the documents Ray had shown me. The hotel receipts, the credit card statements, the timeline of meetings that corresponded with Sarah's late nights. Jennifer studied the papers, her expression growing darker with each page. "Son of a witch," she whispered. "He's been using the company credit card for some of these dinners. And look at this. He charged a weekend in Boston to the business account, claimed it was for the Morrison Industries pitch." "Morrison Industries?" "A client we were trying to land. The pitch meeting was on a Friday, but Derek and Sarah stayed through Sunday. Charged everything to the company. Hotel, meals, even room service. Room service to one room or two? According to this, just one room. A suite at the Four Seasons." Jennifer looked up at me. "Jack, this isn't just an affair. This is embezzlement. Derek's been stealing from his own company to fund his relationship with your wife." I felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly what Ray and I had been looking for. Evidence that would destroy Derek professionally, not just personally. Jennifer, I need your help. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. What kind of help? I need access to Derek's calendar, his email, his expense reports. I need proof that he's been using company resources for personal business. I can't just give you confidential company information, Jack. I could lose my job. You could also get justice for what Derek did to you. Jennifer was quiet for a long time, clearly torn. Finally, she spoke. What Derek did to me wasn't just sexual maltreatment. He made me feel powerless, humiliated. And when I tried to fight back, he bought me off and made me sign a non-disclosure agreement. But if Derek's professional reputation is destroyed, if he loses his position at the company, that NDA won't matter much, will it? A slow smile spread across Jennifer's face. No, it won't. She turned to her computer and began typing. I can't give you direct access to Derek's accounts, but I can print out expense reports and calendar entries. Hypothetically speaking, if those documents were to accidentally end up in the wrong hands, hypothetically speaking, those documents might find their way to Derek's business partners and his wife, and maybe the IRS if there are tax implications. That would be unfortunate for Derek. We worked for the next hour, with Jennifer printing out months of expense reports, calendar entries, and email logs. The evidence was damning. Derek had been charging personal expenses to the company account, scheduling fake client meetings to cover his affairs, and using his position to give Sarah unearned promotions and bonuses. There's one more thing, Jennifer said, as she handed me the last stack of papers. Derek's been telling his partners that he's close to landing a huge new client, Coastal Development Group. It would be a $10 million account. Is he? The client doesn't exist. Derek made it up to explain why he's been so busy lately. His partners are expecting him to announce the deal at the company retreat next month. What happens when he can't deliver? He loses his partnership, probably gets sued by his business partners for fraud. I gathered up all the documents, my mind racing with possibilities. This was more than I dared hope for, not just evidence of the affair, but proof of professional misconduct that would destroy Derek's career. Jennifer, I can't thank you enough for this. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Derek Henderson gets what's coming to him. As I stood to leave, Jennifer grabbed my arm. Jack, be careful. Derek's not going to take this lying down. When cornered, he can be vicious. So can I said, so can I. I met Ray in the lobby, and we walked to his car in silence. Once we were inside, I showed him the documents Jennifer had given us. Ray whistled low as he flipped through the papers. This is a gold mine, Jack. With this evidence, we can destroy Derek Henderson's career, his marriage, and probably send him to prison for embezzlement. What's our next move? We organize everything, build a timeline, and then we start making strategic revelations. First to Derek's business partners, then to his wife, then to the authorities. What about Sarah? Ray's expression hardened. Sarah's going to find out that actions have consequences. Both of them are. As we drove away from the office building, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. Derek Henderson and Sarah Morrison thought they were so smart, so careful, so untouchable. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The reckoning was coming, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. 3 days later, I was ready to make my first move. Ray and I had organized all the evidence into a comprehensive timeline that painted a damning picture of Derek Henderson's professional and personal misconduct. We had hotel receipts, credit card statements, fake calendar entries, and expense reports that showed a clear pattern of using company resources for personal affairs. But before I went nuclear, I wanted to give Derek and Sarah one last chance to come clean. Not because I was feeling generous. I just wanted to see them lie to my face one more time before I destroyed them. I called Sarah and asked her to meet me at Murphy's Tavern at 6 o'clock. Neutral ground, public place, somewhere she'd feel safe enough to be honest. Or at least honest enough to hang herself with her own words. She arrived 10 minutes late, looking nervous and overdressed for a dive bar. She'd clearly spent time on her appearance. Fresh highlights in her hair, a new dress I didn't recognize. Expensive jewelry that definitely wasn't in our budget when we were married. Jack, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Thank you for calling. I've been hoping we could talk. Have you? I signaled the waitress for another beer. What did you want to talk about, Sarah? About us, about our marriage, about whether there's any way we can work through this. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or honesty. Instead, I saw calculation. She was working an angle, trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Work through what exactly? I asked. The affair. I know what I did was wrong, Jack. I know I hurt you, but it wasn't about not loving you. It was about feeling trapped, feeling like I needed something more in my life. Something more. Like Derek Henderson's pecker? Sarah flinched. Don't be crude. I'm being accurate. You felt like you needed Derek Henderson's pecker in your life, so you went out and got it. For 8 months. It wasn't just physical, Sarah said, leaning forward. Derek understands me in ways you never did. He appreciates my intelligence, my creativity. Your willingness to screw him in hotel rooms on company time? Sarah's face flushed. Why are you being so hostile? I'm trying to have a mature conversation about our relationship. Our relationship? I laughed, a harsh sound that made the couple at the next table look over. Sarah, we don't have a relationship. We have a legal contract that you violated by screwing your boss for 8 months. I want to try to fix this, she said desperately. We could go to counseling. We could... Answer me one question, I interrupted. Are you still sleeping with Derek? Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That was answer enough. You are, aren't you? You're still screwing him, even after I found out, even while you're sitting here talking about fixing our marriage. It's complicated, Jack. You don't understand the situation. I understand the situation perfectly. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to keep Derek for the excitement and the money, and keep me for the security and the respectability. That's not true? Bees. I leaned across the table, my voice dropping to a whisper. Sarah, I know everything. I know about the hotel rooms, the fake business trips, the promotion you didn't earn, the company credit cards Derek's been using to pay for your dinners. I know about the birth control pills, the expensive lingerie, the salon appointments before your afternoon screws. Sarah's face went white. How do I know? Because I'm not the stupid blue-collar husband you and Derek think I am. I'm smarter than both of you, and I've been gathering evidence. Evidence of what? Infidelity, embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion. Take your pick. Sarah stared at me in horror. Jack, I can't what? Expose the truth? Protect myself? Make sure you and Derek face consequences for what you've done? Please, Sarah whispered. If this comes out, it'll destroy both our careers. Derek could go to prison. Should have thought of that before you started screwing him in hotel rooms paid for with company money. Sarah reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Jack, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. I'll end it with Derek. I'll quit my job. I'll do whatever you want. I looked down at her hand on mine, the hand that had worn my wedding ring for 23 years, the hand that had touched another man's body while lying to me about working late. Sarah, I said quietly, it's too late for that. Way too late. I pulled my hand away and stood up. Oh, and Sarah? You might want to call Derek and tell him to expect some visitors tomorrow. His business partners are going to have some very interesting questions about his expense reports. Sarah's eyes widened in panic. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Derek Henderson really is and who you really are. I dropped a 20 on the table and walked toward the door. Sarah scrambled out of the booth and followed me. Jack, wait, we can work this out. I turned to face her one last time. Sarah, you made your choice 8 months ago. Now you get to live with the consequences. This will destroy innocent people too. Derek's wife, his children. You should have thought about that before you decided to screw a married man. I pushed open the door and stepped into the cool evening air. Actions have consequences, Sarah. You're about to learn that lesson the hard way. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving Sarah standing in the parking lot of Murphy's Tavern with her cell phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Derek to warn him that their world was about to come crashing down. Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble to try to contain the damage. It wouldn't matter. By tomorrow morning, Derek Henderson's business partners would know exactly how their trusted colleague had been spending company money. By tomorrow afternoon, Patricia Henderson would know exactly what her devoted husband had been doing during his late nights at the office. And by tomorrow evening, the whole city would know that Derek Henderson and Sarah Morrison were cheating, lying, embezzling pieces of crap who'd finally been caught. I drove home through the dark streets, feeling more alive than I had in months. For too long, I'd been the sufferer in this story, the betrayed husband, the betrayed fool, the man who wasn't enough for his ambitious wife. But sufferers don't gather evidence. Sufferers don't build cases. Sufferers don't systematically destroy the people who wronged them. I wasn't a sufferer anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I was a man with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The reckoning was coming, and it was going to be beautiful. I woke up the next morning with the satisfaction of a man who'd been planning Christmas morning for months. Today was the day Derek Henderson's world would implode, and I had front row seats to the destruction. Ray arrived at 8 o'clock sharp with coffee and a grim smile. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since the night I found those text messages." We drove to Henderson and Associates, where Ray had arranged to meet with Derek's business partners, Michael Chen and Robert Walsh, Jennifer's husband. They'd agreed to see us after Ray explained that he had evidence of financial improprieties involving their senior partner. The meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock in the main conference room. Derek wouldn't be there. According to Jennifer, he'd called in sick that morning, probably nursing a hangover from whatever crisis management session he and Sarah had conducted after my conversation with her. Michael Chen was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Robert Walsh was younger, maybe 40, with the kind of aggressive energy that suggested he'd built his career on other people's mistakes. "Gentlemen," Ray began, spreading our evidence across the conference table, "what I'm about to show you is going to be disturbing. Your partner, Derek Henderson, has been using company resources to conduct an extramarital affair." For the next hour, Ray and I laid out the case against Derek. The hotel receipts charged to company credit cards, the fake client meetings that corresponded with afternoon trysts, the business trips that were actually romantic getaways, the promotion given to Sarah Morrison that she hadn't earned. Michael Chen grew paler with each document. Robert Walsh's jaw got tighter. "This is embezzlement," Walsh said finally. "Derek's been stealing from the company to fund his affair." "It gets worse," Ray said, pulling out the timeline Jennifer had helped us create. "Derek's been telling you he's close to landing Coastal Development Group as a client. That's a lie. The company doesn't exist. Derek made it up to explain why he's been unavailable so much lately." Chen's hands shook as he examined the fake correspondence Derek had created with the non-existent client. "We've been planning our expansion based on this deal. We've already hired new staff, signed a lease on additional office space." "How much money are we talking about?" Walsh asked. "Between the embezzled expenses and the costs associated with the fake client deal, probably close to $500,000, Ray said. Walsh slammed his hand on the table. "That son of a witch. We trusted him." "What are our options?" Chen asked. "You can fire him and try to recover the money through civil litigation," Ray said. "Or you can press criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Either way, Derek Henderson's career in advertising is over." "What about the woman he was having the affair with?" Walsh asked. "Sarah Morrison." "She was complicit in the fraud," I said, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. "She knew the business trips were fake. She knew Derek was using company money for personal expenses, and she accepted a promotion she didn't deserve." "Fire her too," Walsh said immediately. "I want both of them out of this building by the end of the day." "There's one more thing," Ray said. "Derek's wife doesn't know about any of this. She deserves to hear the truth before it becomes public." Chen and Walsh exchanged glances. "You're right," Chen said. "Patricia's a good woman. She shouldn't have to learn about this from the newspapers." "I'll handle that conversation," Walsh said. "Patricia and my wife are friends. It should come from someone she trusts." As the meeting broke up, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Phase 1 of Derek Henderson's destruction was complete. By the end of the day, he'd be unemployed, facing criminal charges, and dealing with a wife who knew the truth about his infidelity. But I wasn't done yet. Ray and I drove across town to Derek's house on Lake Sebago. It was even more impressive in person, a sprawling colonial with perfectly manicured grounds and a 3-car garage. Derek's BMW was in the driveway, along with a white Mercedes that probably belonged to his wife. "Looks like they're both home," Ray observed. "Perfect." We parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, Robert Walsh's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, straightened his tie, and walked to the front door with the grim determination of a man about to deliver terrible news. Through the large front windows, we could see Walsh talking to Patricia Henderson in what looked like the living room. Derek appeared a few minutes later, still in his bathrobe, looking confused and alarmed. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes. We couldn't hear what was being said, but the body language told the story. Patricia's hands flew to her mouth in shock. Derek tried to approach her, but she backed away. Walsh handed her a manila envelope, copies of the evidence, no doubt. Then Patricia Henderson did something I hadn't expected. She walked calmly to a side table, picked up what looked like a crystal vase, and hurled it at Derek's head. Derek ducked, and the vase shattered against the wall behind him. "Holy crap," Ray muttered. "Patricia Henderson's got some fight in her." The argument that followed was visible through the windows. Patricia screaming, Derek trying to explain, Walsh standing awkwardly in the corner. Finally, Patricia pointed toward the door, clearly telling Derek to get out. Derek disappeared upstairs and returned 10 minutes later with a suitcase. Patricia had locked herself in another room. Derek stood in the driveway for a moment, looking lost and defeated, then got in his BMW and drove away. "Phase 2 complete," I said with satisfaction. My phone rang. Jennifer Walsh. "Jack, Derek just showed up at the office. He's screaming at Michael Chen, demanding to know who gave you the financial records. Security's on their way up." "Good. Let him make a scene. The more witnesses, the better." "There's something else. Sarah's here too. She's in Derek's office, crying and packing up her things. Word's gotten around the building that they're both being fired. How's the staff taking it? Are you kidding? This is the best gossip we've had in years. Everyone's talking about it. The story's already leaked to 3 other companies downtown." I hung up and turned to Ray. "Derek's at the office making a scene. Sarah's packing up her desk. The story's spreading through the business community." "And tomorrow it'll be in the newspapers," Ray said. "Local advertising executive fired for embezzlement and infidelity. His career's over." We drove back downtown and parked across from Henderson and Associates. Sure enough, Derek's BMW was in the parking garage, along with Sarah's Honda. Through the office windows, we could see people clustered in groups, clearly discussing the scandal. At 2:30, Derek emerged from the building carrying a cardboard box. His face was red with anger and humiliation. He threw the box in his car so hard that papers scattered across the garage floor. Sarah appeared 10 minutes later, also carrying a box, but her expression was different. She looked broken, defeated, like a woman who just realized that her entire life had fallen apart in a single morning. They met at their cars and had what looked like an intense conversation. Derek was gesturing angrily, probably blaming Sarah for the disaster. Sarah was crying, probably trying to salvage whatever relationship they had left. Finally, Derek got in his car and drove away without looking back. Sarah stood alone in the parking garage, holding her cardboard box of personal belongings, the wreckage of her career and her marriage scattered around her feet. I felt a moment of something that might have been pity. Then I remembered 8 months of lies, 8 months of betrayal, 8 months of being treated like a fool. The pity passed. Ray and I drove to Murphy's Tavern to celebrate, the same bar where this whole thing had started, where I'd first learned the truth about my wife's affair. It seemed fitting to end it there. "So, what's next?" Ray asked as we settled into a booth with our beers. "Divorce proceedings. Sarah's lawyer will try to get her alimony, but with the evidence we have of her affair and professional misconduct, she won't get much." "And Derek?" "Derek's facing criminal charges for embezzlement. His wife's going to take him for everything in the divorce. His career's over, his reputation's destroyed, and he's probably going to prison." Ray raised his beer. "To justice." "To consequences," I corrected. We drank in comfortable silence, 2 old friends who'd successfully destroyed the people who'd tried to destroy me. Outside, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Jack, please call me. We need to talk about what happens next." I deleted the message without responding. There was nothing left to talk about. Sarah had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. Derek Henderson had made his choices too. He'd thought he could use his position and his wealth to take whatever he wanted, including another man's wife. He'd thought he was untouchable, too important, and too smart to face consequences for his actions. He'd been wrong. They'd both been wrong. As I sat in that dive bar, surrounded by the smell of beer and cigarettes and honest working people, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would come later, maybe. But peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that justice has been served, that the scales have been balanced, that the people who wronged you have paid the price for their actions. Derek Henderson and Sarah Morrison had thought they could betray me and walk away clean. They'd thought I'd be the quiet, dignified sufferer who'd suffer in silence while they built their new life on the ruins of my old one. They'd been wrong about that too. I wasn't a sufferer. I was a man who'd been wronged and, I'd made sure that wrong was made right. The reckoning was complete.